I remember the exact moment the door closed behind them. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The sun was high and hot, burning the pavement outside the nursing home like it was trying to warn me. But I didn't see it coming. I didn't see anything coming, not after what I had just given them. My daughter Rachel stood there with her husband, Kyle, both of them smiling like they were doing me some kind of favor. My two grandkids, Ellie and Mason, didn't even look up from their phones. Rachel gave me a soft pat on the arm like I was a dog being left at a kennel. "It's just for a while, Mama," she said. "Until we get things settled. The house is too full, and with Kyle working 2 jobs and me homeschooling." She paused, waiting for me to nod along like I always did. But my mouth was dry. I just stared at her. Because I had heard lies before. I had raised her. I knew when she was lying. And this one was meant to be permanent. "I packed your sweaters," she said, like that was something to be grateful for. "They'll keep you warm." I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come out. Not yet. They walked out. Just like that. Kyle didn't even say goodbye. The grandkids didn't look back. The front doors of the facility hissed shut behind them, and I sat there in my wheelchair, staring at the beige walls, the silent nurses behind their desk, and the slow tick of a wall clock that sounded like it was counting down my last breaths. I was 79 years old. I had raised 3 kids, buried one, and helped build 2 homes with my bare hands. I had nursed my husband through cancer, worked 2 cleaning jobs when the mortgage got behind, and took care of my grandkids when their parents were too busy. I had cooked Sunday dinners for 28 years straight, never missed a birthday, never said no when they needed help. And now I was just dropped off, like garbage. I stared out the window, the view of a dying patch of grass and a crooked chain-link fence mocking me. The smell of stale air and bleach crept up my nose. The woman next to me, some poor soul named Dolores, was drooling onto her bib, mumbling to herself. Was this it? Was this how my story ended? Then something inside me, something I didn't even know was still alive, shifted. Whoa. They thought this was the end. That I'd wither quietly. That I'd go away like an old photo album gathering dust in a box. But they forgot one thing. This grandma still had fire in her bones. And I was going to make damn sure they remembered who I was. Because I didn't just raise a family. I built a legacy. And now, they were going to see what happens when you betray the one person who gave you everything. I wasn't always this woman sitting in a chair that smells like old soup, with nurses calling me sweetie, like I'm some lost toddler. Whoa. Once, I was Marlene Mae Cooper, the fire of the house on Sycamore Street. I wore my name like armor. I built a home, not with bricks and blueprints, but with cinnamon in the air, clean laundry folded just right, and a front porch that always had room for a tired soul. My husband, Frank, used to call me the glue. "Nothing in this family sticks without you," he'd say with a wink, slapping flour off my apron while I rolled out pie crusts. God, I miss that man. Cancer took him fast. 8 months from diagnosis to funeral. I carried him through the worst of it, even when he couldn't remember our kids' names. Bathed him. I held him when he cried. I buried him with my bare hands shaking, but I stood tall in front of the family. Because someone had to. And after he was gone, I never stopped. Rachel, my oldest, moved back in with her new husband when their business failed. I turned the guest room into a nursery when little Ellie came. Kyle didn't lift a finger. Said he was between passions, whatever that meant. But I cooked for them, smiled through it, and prayed over every plate I served. I babysat the kids so they could go to marriage counseling, and when that failed, I was the one they cried to. I kept secrets that weren't mine. I kept peace that tore me up inside. I remember one night, after Mason had a fever and Rachel was too tired to stay up with him, I sat on the edge of his bed singing softly until he fell asleep. And in the quiet of that room, I whispered to myself, "You're doing this for love, for family. That's what matters." But somewhere along the way, love turned into expectation. Helping turned into obligation. And before I knew it, I wasn't grandma anymore. I was the live-in maid, the unpaid nanny, the ghost in the hallway they only noticed when something wasn't done. And still I stayed. Because that's what mothers do. Stay. We forgive. We hope. But the thing no one tells you is that hope can rot. And the moment they wheeled me into this so-called retirement facility, it all clicked. I hadn't been loved in years. I'd been used. They didn't put me here to rest. They put me here to disappear. But there was one thing they didn't count on. While they were too busy treating me like yesterday's news, I was listening, watching, remembering. I knew things, deep things. Kept all their secrets. I knew where the cracks were. I knew how to break a family apart if I wanted to. And maybe, just maybe, it was time they learned what it felt like to be forgotten. 'Cause I may be old, but I'm not finished. And revenge. Well, darling, revenge has no expiration date. Let me tell you something they don't warn you about getting old. People stop seeing you. Not just ignoring you, no, it's deeper than that. You become invisible. Like your thoughts don't matter. Like your memories aren't worth listening to. You're just some old relic with a wobbly hand and too many stories. But here's the funny part. When they stop seeing you, they start talking around you. And that's when the secrets spill. I'd been in this facility less than a week when the staff started talking freely around me, thinking I was too deaf or too gone to care. But I heard every word. I learned which nurses stole medications, which residents had affairs with each other, which family members never showed up, and which ones only did to sign paperwork and collect checks. But I didn't just listen to them. I started remembering my own. You see, I wasn't always quiet. I knew about Kyle's offshore accounts, the ones Rachel never knew existed, back when he faked bankruptcy so they could qualify for family aid. He used me as a tax write-off for years. I was the dependent in their papers, not out of love but convenience. And Rachel, my sweet, tired Rachel, she'd once told me a secret in tears when she was 23. Something about her first pregnancy. The one she lost. But I saw the clinic receipt. I never said a word. I held her in my arms and told her she was brave. But I kept that slip of paper, tucked deep into the back of an old cookbook where no one ever looked. And then there was Ellie, my granddaughter, 17 going on sour. She thought she was slick, hiding those little orange pills in her makeup case, stealing $20 bills from my purse when she thought I was asleep on the couch. But I wasn't asleep. Always saw. I held all their sins in my hands for years. I cradled them like fragile things, too scared to let them fall. But now, I wasn't scared anymore. Something about being tossed aside, like a napkin after dinner, clears your eyes. That afternoon, I asked the nurse to bring me my purse. She was hesitant, said it was locked away in the cabinet, but I gave her a smile that made her uncomfortable enough to comply. Inside, I pulled out a small, folded paper. Yellowed. The corner of that clinic receipt still poking out like it wanted to breathe. My hands trembled. Not from weakness. From memory. They thought they buried me. But I still had roots. And if you pull a root hard enough, the whole tree shakes. I wasn't sure what I'd do yet. I didn't want to hurt them, not really. But I needed them to see me again. To understand what they'd done. And maybe the only way to wake them up was to shake the family tree until all the lies fell out. The funny thing about secrets is, they rot when kept too long. But once you let a little light in, they start to bloom. Ugly, powerful, unstoppable. That night I couldn't sleep. The hallway light flickered under my door, and the smell of reheated chicken and floor wax lingered in the air. Dolores, my roommate, snored like a freight train. But none of it bothered me. I was too busy writing. The pen felt heavy in my hand. My fingers ached from arthritis, but I wrote anyway. Each word scratched into the paper like it was being carved out of me. It wasn't a letter full of warmth or nostalgia. This one came straight from the marrow. A letter to Rachel and Kyle, yes, but also to every person who ever underestimated me. It started like this. You may have thrown me away, but you forgot who I am. I wrote about the sacrifices. The nights I stayed awake with screaming babies while they slept. The money I tucked into Rachel's purse when she was too proud to ask. The time I held Kyle's hand through his DUI hearing so he wouldn't lose his job. All the things they never thanked me for. things they barely remembered. Then I reminded them of what I remembered. I mentioned Kyle's secret bank account, the one I found on a tax statement when I was helping sort papers 5 years ago. I hinted at Rachel's first pregnancy, not in shame but in acknowledgement. A reminder that I had carried her pain silently, so she didn't have to. And then I wrote, "You thought I was too old to matter, but I hold the truth in my hands. And truth, my dear, doesn't age. It just waits." I didn't threaten them. I didn't have to. Just the knowledge that I knew, that I still held, was enough. And to make sure the letter hit where it hurt, I didn't mail it. Emailed it. Yes, Grandma figured out email. The nurse helped me reset the password on my old iPad, and by the time breakfast was being wheeled in, that message was sitting fresh in both their inboxes. Bold, direct, and unforgettable. By noon, Rachel had called the nursing home 3 times. By 3 o'clock she was in the lobby. And I didn't even flinch when I saw her. She came in with her hair pulled back too tight, that same anxious twitch in her left eye. She looked like she hadn't slept. "But, Mama," she said, her voice too high, too fake. "Can we talk?" Smiled. Not a cruel smile. A knowing one. I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands in my lap, and said calmly, "Of course we can, sweetheart. But this time, you're going to listen." Because for the first time in decades, I wasn't begging for a place at the table. I was the table. Rachel sat across from me in one of those stiff plastic chairs the nursing home puts out for visitors, the kind that makes you feel like you're just passing through. Her hands were clenched in her lap, her leg bouncing nervously like it used to when she was a little girl caught sneaking out after curfew. But this wasn't a child's mistake. This was betrayal. "You really think it was that bad, Mama?" she asked finally. Her voice was soft but defensive. We didn't know what else to do." I tilted my head slow and steady and looked her in the eyes, those same green eyes I once kissed every night before bedtime. "You mean to tell me you didn't know what it meant to dump your mother in a place that smells like death and bleach, without so much as a proper goodbye?" "Mama, we were overwhelmed. Kyle's job. Kyle's lies," I interrupted gently. She froze. I saw the flicker in her eyes. The guilt. The confusion. And then, the slow dread as she realized I knew more than she thought. "You think I don't know about the offshore account?" said. "You think I can't read a bank statement?" I was balancing checkbooks before Kyle was even out of pull-ups. Rachel opened her mouth, but no words came out. "You used me," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "Not just once. For years. I cooked, I cleaned, I watched your kids while you figured things out. I gave until there was nothing left in me. And when I finally got too tired to carry your life on my back, you packed me up like I was in the way." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't stop. "You didn't ask what I wanted. You didn't even ask how I felt. You made a choice. One you can't take back with a hug and a teary apology." She buried her face in her hands. "I didn't know how to fix it. I just thought, you'd be okay." I leaned in, my voice barely above a whisper. "I am okay, Rachel. But not because of you. Because I finally remembered who I am." The silence between us was heavy. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time in years. Not as the help. Not as the forgotten old woman in the back room. But as the mother who built everything she stood on. "I want you to hear something and hear it well," I said. "This isn't about revenge. This is about truth. You need to learn what it costs to throw people away." Rachel nodded slowly, tears falling now. "I'm not asking for your pity. I'm demanding your respect." Then I reached into my sweater pocket and slid an envelope across the table. "You've got 3 days. That's a full weekend. In that time, you're going to decide if this family still deserves to call itself one." She looked down at it, afraid to touch it. "What's in it?" she asked. "Everything you need to remember who I am." And I stood up, slowly, painfully but tall, and walked away before she could answer. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do is leave someone sitting in the silence of their own shame. The envelope sat on Rachel's kitchen table for nearly 24 hours. A silent threat. A reminder of everything she had tried to bury. Inside were documents I'd gathered over the years. Tax statements showing Kyle's offshore accounts, photos of Ellie sneaking out late at night, and a heartfelt letter from me that laid everything bare. It wasn't about shame. It was about truth. By the second day, Rachel called Kyle. For the first time in years, the cracks in their perfect little facade started to show. I watched from my nursing home room, listening to snippets of their arguments carried faintly on my cracked hearing aid. Kyle denied, swore it was nothing, but Rachel's voice was hard, stronger than I remembered. She wasn't the scared girl I once comforted. She was becoming someone new, someone who wouldn't let the past be swept under the rug. Ellie showed up unexpectedly that afternoon. She avoided looking at me, but I could tell she was unsettled. I reached out with a gentle smile and said, "Honey, we're all carrying burdens. The question is, how do we choose to carry them?" She nodded slowly, a tear slipping down her cheek. The family I once knew was breaking apart, but maybe that was the only way to rebuild. Meanwhile, I started reaching out, connecting with old friends, neighbors, even people from Frank's days on the farm. I wasn't ready to fade away quietly. I was gathering strength, support, fuel for the fire that was still burning inside me. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about reclaiming the dignity stolen from all of us. And I was ready to fight for every inch. The nursing home wasn't just a place to be forgotten. It was a quiet battleground. Between the faded walls and slow footsteps, I found strength in the most unlikely allies. There was Joe, a retired mechanic with a heart as big as Texas, who told me stories of his own family's fallouts. There was Mildred, who ran the knitting club and knew how to get the best out of stubborn folks. And then the night nurse, Sarah, young, tired, but fiercely loyal once you earned her trust. Together we formed a little resistance, a family of the forgotten who'd had enough. But my real power came when I started reaching back out to the community Frank and I had built. I called old neighbors, the pastor who married me and Frank, even the lady who ran the farmer's market. They remembered me. They remembered Frank. And they weren't about to let some nursing home chain silence a woman who'd been the backbone of their town. Word started to spread. Suddenly, I wasn't just the old lady in room 12B. I was Marlene Mae Cooper, the woman who'd raised generations, who'd built homes, who'd never given up. And that scared them. Because while Rachel was sorting out her family's mess, I was building a network strong enough to demand answers. Not just from them, but from everyone who'd turned their backs. One afternoon, Sarah came in with a folder. "This came for you," she said, placing it gently on my bedside table. Inside were photos, pictures from Rachel's Facebook, videos from Ellie's party, documents confirming Kyle's side deals that no one was supposed to know about. Someone was helping me. Someone wanted to see justice served. Smiled. This wasn't just my comeback. It was everyone's. Started with whispers. Quiet murmurs in the grocery store aisles, knowing glances from old friends, and a few too many questions from the pastor during Sunday service. The evidence that had quietly found its way into my hands was making waves. Kyle's offshore accounts were no longer hidden in dusty files. They were the talk of the town. The local paper caught wind, and before I knew it, there was a headline I never thought I'd see. "Local Family Secrets Uncovered. A Story of Betrayal and Redemption." Rachel called me that night. Her voice cracked. "Mama, what have you done?" I smiled, though she couldn't see me. "I did what you should have done years ago," I told her. "I took control." The family that had once tossed me aside was unraveling. Ellie was pulled from school for a week after her pills were found. Kyle faced an investigation, and Rachel was forced to look at the mess she'd helped create. But amid the chaos, something strange happened. People started reaching out to me. Old neighbors, friends I hadn't seen in years, even strangers who'd read the story online. They sent letters, flowers, phone calls. For the first time in a long time I felt seen. Not as a burden. Not as a forgotten old woman. But as a force. The fire in my bones was roaring now. And there was no putting it out. The days that followed were like a storm no one could stop. Rachel stopped avoiding me. She showed up in my room, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers from the garden, something Frank used to bring me on our anniversaries. "I'm sorry," she said, voice trembling. "I didn't realize how much I hurt you." I looked at her, my heart aching but steady. "Sorry isn't enough, Rachel. You have to change. For you, for the kids, for this family." She nodded, wiping a tear. "I want to make things right. I want us to be a family again." Ellie came too, her eyes red but hopeful. "Grandma, I'm scared. But I want to be better." Pulled them close. "Then we start now. Together." Kyle, on the other hand, was a different story. He fought the investigations, denied everything, but the proof was too strong. Even his own mother had turned away. He realized that the woman he'd tried to bury was the one who held all the cards. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for the family I refused to lose. But the fight wasn't easy. Some nights I sat in the dark, wondering if all this pain was worth it. Then I'd think of Frank, of the life we built, and I'd find strength. Because this wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. It was about love. And it was about reminding everyone, no matter how old you are, how much fire can burn inside one woman. It was a quiet morning when Rachel, Ellie, and I sat together on the porch, the same porch Frank and I had built all those years ago. The sun was warm but gentle. The breeze carried the scent of honeysuckle and freshly cut grass. For the first time in a long time, the house felt like home again. We'd been through hell and back. Tears, anger, forgiveness. All tangled up in the messy, beautiful thing called family. Rachel had started counseling, Ellie was getting help for her struggles, and Kyle, well, he was gone. Not just from the house but from our lives. It wasn't perfect. Never would be. But it was honest. As I looked at my daughter and granddaughter, I realized something important. You can't change the past. You can't erase the pain. But you can choose how you show up in the story going forward. And I chose to show up with fire. Because that's what I am. Not just a grandma tossed aside. Not just a woman broken by betrayal. But a woman who reclaimed her power. Who fought for her dignity. Who reminded everyone that no matter your age, your story is far from over. I smiled, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face. And I knew, deep in my bones, that the fire inside me would never die.